much, guys. And we welcome each one of you today from across the world, each one of you power women, each one of you women's allies, and each one of you who want to make an impact. I'm your host, Palakoli, and along with my co-host, Lauren Hammond, and we're Leadogo. So a little bit about what we do and why we're doing this. So Leadogo essentially stands for Leaders in Doing Good. And we're essentially this social learning network with a diverse global community. We have people from all ages, and we really aspire to drive change and supporting each other in our quest for a little bit of personal, organizational, and societal development. So our services include mentoring, coaching, advisory, and fun ways of networking, along with some experiential learning, which we call the Leadogo Academy. And a little bit about our why is that we're, this bunch of purpose-driven people who not just that, but want to make some actionable change in the world. And really to fulfill our mission, we organize, these sharing circle events like the one we have today to really bring some value to our audience. And since it's the Women's History Month, we thought nothing better than bringing together some really powerful women who've beaten all odds and made a mark in the society. So I really want to extend a very heartfelt thank you to each one of you as panelists for joining us today. And maybe we could start off with a quick virtual round of introductions. Maybe we can talk about our current position and if we want to share a fun fact about ourselves.
So Haley, kick us off.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for just inviting all of us to be here. I really appreciate it. And I'm stoked to hear from all of these wonderful women as well. As you mentioned, my name's Haley Kalani. I'm a high performance creative coach, which is a mouthful. And frankly, it's a made up title because I think all of our titles could never really explain what we all do. So my mission is really to help entrepreneurs and freelancers and executives become the most creative, productive, and connected version of themselves. And when I say connected, I really mean from the inside out. So getting connected with ourselves and then how that translates to everybody around us, whether it's with our network or our friends or our family or people online to help fuel our business. And creativity has been something that I've been extremely passionate about ever since I was a kid. And it's really leaked into everything that I do today. So it makes me really excited. And when I'm not doing coaching one-on-one with people, I love getting outside, hiking, kayaking, sometimes some MMA, get out this angst or whatever we got going on and play.
Love it. Esmara.
Is it because I drew attention to myself by clapping? Is that what it is? Okay, Gotcha.
Actually, no, you're just going in order that I can see you.
Gotcha. Hi, everyone. My name is Asmara Cosmi. I am the lady with the tips, the quips, and the red lipstick. And I am a systems design specialist. I've spent my life in the sciences. My background is in psychology. But I'm really passionate about creating productive and efficient systems that help people and organizations realize the best version of themselves. So that's what I do in my day job. And when I'm not optimizing everything, in existence, I enjoy learning languages. I currently know 5 of them, and I'm working on number 6. And I'm a huge adrenaline junkie. So really excited to be here. And thanks for having me.
Thank you. Kate.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. My name is Kate, yes, but everyone calls me Chibet. So if I get confused when you call me Kate, it's mostly because no one really calls me Kate. I'm from Kenya, Nairobi, and I am an entrepreneur. I am virtually unemployable because I started a business because I really wanted to be part of the change I wanted to be. And I felt that every other space that I worked in, which was development, because I studied economics and then I ended up working in the development world. And I came to the conclusion that actually we needed more people doing what we do, all of us here, which is to create value, package it in the most efficient way. So I have a lifestyle brand, which is in fashion because I love fashion. And now we have a lifestyle, a travel brand, and figuring out how to create more value by being in the fintech space, because that is the biggest gap that I've seen in existence as an entrepreneur, particularly one living in sub-Saharan Africa. Yeah, fun fact, my mentor just told me that I am very friendly, but maybe this is not something to say in a webinar. But that there are parts of me that might seem inaccessible. So I'm working on that going forward. Yeah. Is that a fun fact? I'm so confused. Anyway, I'm so to be here.
Either way, thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. Dana.
Yay! So my name is Dana Ferrant, and I am a badass business performance coach. Another made-up title, just like Haley. I love that. So I bring my background as a former 7-figure business owner and as a dominatrix to help men and women get their head out of their ass into gear so that they can make their business a success without sacrificing themselves. So to blend their spiritual beliefs, blend the consciousness in and grow with ease. So that's what I love doing. I've been doing that for going on a few decades now. Fun fact, I am the slave of 2 Bengal cats who have conditioned me with some Stockholm syndrome because they continue to wake me up at 3 or 4 in the morning on a daily basis. So yeah, if I'm occasionally sleep deprived, it's all their fault.
Understandably, very much so.
Right.
Ashita.
Sure. Congratulations to the Leadogo team. You guys are doing awesome work. And thank you for having me here. It's such an honor. My name is Ashita Sethi, and I'm a director at Bank of America within our global corporate and investment banking division. I cover foreign banks, asset managers, insurance companies here in the US. And in my role, I'm responsible for their corporate needs, ranging from capital and risk management to treasury solutions and wealth management. Prior to corporate banking, I was an investment banker also at BofA. I joined the firm in 2011, right out of school in New York, and I've been at BofA my entire career. Fun fact about me, I love adventure sports, skydiving, bungee jumping, hot air balloon. I've done it all. So very excited about that, always.
Man, we got some women who came to play today. I love it. Arul, last but certainly not least.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Parul. I am a story coach. I'm not sure if there's an official title that exists in the world that goes by story coach, but here I am. What do I really do? What do I really mean by a story coach? Well, I work with coaches, fellow change makers, and I help them be seen and heard through their personal stories. And I do it by helping them find their story, by owning their story and sharing their story, because it is my big mission to help people be seen and heard in this world, be seen and heard by themselves and by other people, because I understand what it is like to be in a space where others don't see and hear us, and how that feels hard, and it's not a pleasant place to be in. And I also understand what it is like to be in a place where we don't see and hear ourselves. Because when we don't see and hear ourselves, well, we tend to go into hiding, or we play small. We don't step up powerfully. And that's a horrible place to be in. And when we are in that place, there's no chance that we would let anyone else see and hear us. So that's what my big mission as a story coach is. And I help people share their stories. A fun fact about me, I'm a fab cook, but I'm an appalling baker. If I offer you cake, say no.
Excellent. Well, thank you, ladies, so much. And Parul, you actually had a phenomenal segue into the concept of today. You know, we intentionally named this webinar Lift as We Climb, because often as even in ambitious women, we can be plagued by that concept of fear or that concept of the imposter syndrome in terms of, am I really the right person to be here in this moment? And as Parul was just touching on, while you may feel uncomfortable of being there in the moment, you also recognize, and we as women also recognize, we have a place to be. And it's oftentimes that stifling, oh, I know I can be here, but how do I step into that? And how do I step out of the fear that I experience in that moment? So that's what we're going to talk about today, and work and listen with you from you all, or hear from you all in terms of what does that journey look like for you? So to kick off the conversation, you know, what has been maybe your biggest challenge when it comes to fear as an ambitious woman?
Can kick it off, I ask.
That's the whole point. Just jump in.
I think one of the biggest things that get to us, and it falls hand in hand with what each one of you were saying, is, are we worthy enough? Like when we get to a position or we are, you know, in front of certain opportunities, it's like, do we deserve this? Am I going to fail? A lot of that fear comes from just the unknown and a lot of the conditioning that we've had as women growing up in this world. Is there somebody better than us that deserves this position more? And I think working through that battle is more of an internal unlearning of what has been going on in my brain, what thoughts are coming up here that are saying that, you know, oh, I don't know enough, or if I was just in this position, maybe I would feel more worthy. And really starting to realize that it's almost a false thinking or an unintelligent thinking, and shifting our focus to what's here and now. And if the opportunity was given to us, it was given to us for a reason, meaning we are worth it. We are capable of doing it. And we wouldn't have been given that opportunity if that other person or that group of people didn't think that we were up to par to play at that level.
I would definitely echo everything you said there. And I think, you know, we as women tend to attribute our success to luck, you know, more often than we probably even should. And I can guarantee the fact that our male counterparts definitely don't do so. On the contrary, they sort of, you know, pound the table and say, no, we deserve this. And in fact, it's just stick out there. And I think, you know, 60% of women wouldn't apply for a role unless they actually meet all the requirements, unlike our male counterparts who would apply for the role even if they only met 80% of the requirements. But I think just to sort of talk about my own fears, you know, I think fear is a very strong word. So maybe just sort of, you know, when you take on something new or when you're in a challenge, it's human nature to question yourself and sort of be a little shaky about things, right? When I took on my current role about 2 years ago, it was the first time that I sort of had my own client portfolio. And I was sort of driving the conversations with CFOs and treasurers. It was indeed very daunting for me at first, very uncomfortable. I remember sort of calling my husband and my mom, who, by the way, is in India, multiple times during the day and being like, you know, is this sort of the right way to think about this situation? The CFO has asked me something. How do I respond? What do I do? Just sort of wanting affirmation. But then as I got more comfortable in the role and as I was put into more of those situations, I realized, you know, that I have to sort of figure it out as we go along. And just last month, I got promoted to director. And their affirmation that, you know, it's working. So I think the old adage that, you know, practice makes perfect is definitely something I stand by, and I would recommend sort of for others to think about as well.
Yeah, I love the comments coming through, and I really echo that as well. And I'd say from my own experience, so I grew up in a cult, and there was very much a conditioning of women are second-class citizens. You know, you shouldn't be ambitious. You shouldn't go for anything. You don't even need to go to college. Those were the messages that were given. And I know, you know, not just, you know, people growing up in a cult, but there's a lot of cultures that have the same idea. So I think there's a lot of conditioning for women to hold back. And the reality is that women have only been in the workplace for less than 100 years, actively in the workplace, choosing to be. So we're coming up against a lot of deconditioning. And it starts with us. And I'd say for myself, it was always this piece of like, am I, like as Haley said, am I good enough? And I hate the word worthy. I have a whole rant on that, but because I think worthy is a big lie that we end up putting ourselves into this scenario, because you can never be worthy. Like what determines that? And so to actually try to be worthy is a piece that we end up holding ourselves back. I know I held myself back for a long time. And over the years, I mean, I just had my 50th birthday, and now I look back and thank you. I look back and I'm thinking, man, if I had just known, and I know we're going to get to this question later, but if I had known that it really wasn't all that big of a deal, that everybody else was making it up as they went as well, if I knew that, I think there'd be a lot less of this internal, shaming of myself, thinking I'm not doing as good, when really, and especially in business, maybe less so in corporate, but in business, like we literally are making it up day by day. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that's where creativity comes. So, that would be kind of like something I would hold out for other people, but also recognizing that for my own path, it's been getting to the place where, what, I'm just going to go for what I'm going to go for, and be damned what anybody thinks about me.
We love the whole, stuff we've talked about, deconditioning and, unlearning, and, almost just like believing in ourselves. Even Kate, your journey has been like no one else, and, would love to hear from you that, this brand that you've built, Vazi, which actually means open-minded. How's it been? Like, what makes you, you?
Thanks for that question. So in many ways, I have been lucky, because I never considered for a moment that I could fail, even though success always seems to be in a time in the future. I don't know how long that will be, but failing is not an option. And I think it came from having a mother that was, my mom works for government, and she comes from this space of, you need a job, you need your pension, and you need to behave. But however, if you feel that you have certain interests, certain goals, my mom never told me that I couldn't do something, even though I saw her all my life. I saw my mom living in a very limited kind of space, because my mom is a second wife to someone, to my dad, and here, I mean, polygamy is as old as age itself. But even though I knew I could never be in a polygamous relationship, for example, but seeing this person be in that space and still allow me to be my best self, I've always been a little bit of an outlier kid. I used to think I lacked discipline, but now I realize it's just that I was different, and that has served me well. That it keeps me going, and it's not easy. And Dana, you've been an entrepreneur for much longer, and I guess you can attest to the fact that it's not easy being an entrepreneur, but it's not easy being a director at Bank of America. I can't even imagine what that looks like. And I think that internal conversation, and which is what I try to instill in my children, both the boy, because I'm like, who's going to marry him if I don't instill conversations that he's good enough? Because I think that was something that happened in Kenya, and now I understand everywhere in the world, that the girl was told you're good, but I don't think a lot of people say you're good to the boy. They just have to figure it out. And I see that with my son and my daughter. My daughter is turning 13, and Marley is 11 and a half. And she doesn't take nonsense from this guy. She's like, woo, fight, you, blah, blah, blah. And I don't think he will grow up to be he will always know that you don't mess around with girls. and that is the future. But then I try and just tell him that, you can do this, because I think it's also important going forward that we have that conversation with the men, because we don't exist in a vacuum. We need husbands, we have brothers, we have fathers, and so that conversation now needs to happen to everyone, both boys and girls. I think it's really important for us to eventually find balance, because I feel like the world is completely imbalanced right now, and maybe I'm tilting more towards the women. And will that scale tilt and flip this whole thing over again, and then we're back to square one? Men empowerment. So that is what it has been. Just having confidence, knowing that it's not easy, and not being afraid. I am actually not afraid of anything, and that comes from how I was conditioned. There's still things I need to learn from coaches, like the ones I've seen in this panel. But I think that is my foundation. It's just that, just go for it.
Yeah, you all bring up some really good points in terms of, Chavez, what you just said in terms of, could we tip scales and be back to square one? And then Dana saying that logically, we all know that everyone's making it up as we go along, yet we have this thought in our mind that everyone else has it figured out. And, if from a women's standpoint, it's kind of like, how then, kind of going back, bringing all of this together, right? Because in the fabric of what you all said is really leaning on some sort of support system. So knowing that we're all in this space, logically knowing that we're all making it up, how have you guys leaned into those around you, both men and women, right? Because everybody brings this different perspective, as Chavez was just bringing up. How have you leaned into them to find where you are now, to access this current version of yourself?
So it's funny because I never really thought much about fear or imposter syndrome or what it meant. And in terms of my support system, I didn't really ever take a whole lot of time in assessing it until I became an entrepreneur. And I was like, wow, a lot of the relationships I've relied on in the past are kind of toxic and dysfunctional. So it was this element of like assessing, but also embracing the good and kind of letting go of the bad. And for me, a huge part of that was realizing that, all of these feelings that I feel, the imposter syndrome, the fear, the whatever, another way to kind of reframe that is to think of it as an unintended consequence of being super self-aware, right? And when I made that mindset shift, I was like, okay, well, if I'm taking at face value, this is what it is. The way to counteract that is to surround myself with people who constantly encourage me to check my assumptions. So that's what I've done. And I'm really fortunate to have found some like-minded people, some people who are on completely other side of the spectrum. And for me, it's been about not so much finding your tribe, but like finding a way to kind of convalesce all of these diverse perspectives into something that's coherent and true to myself.
That's super powerful, Asmara, how you've built your sounding board. I would love to know from you, Parul, as well, how has been your journey?
Well, what Asmara said resonated with me. I come from a family of corporate employees. That's what we had qualified for. That's what we aimed for, and that we don't do entrepreneurship. But after I went through cancer and survived cancer, I wanted different things for my life. And I decided to become this coach and set up my coaching practice. We don't do entrepreneurship. We don't get it in our family. And in the beginning, I would say I really struggled. And I struggled because I was trying to be a business owner with the mindset of a corporate employee. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. You have to step into the role of a business owner, own it, and then you can run a business. You cannot do that as a corporate employees with a corporate employee's mindset. And when I was going through this this turmoil in the beginning and having all these doubts. Is there something wrong with me? Is there something wrong with my offer? Why aren't people buying? Da, 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 da. My whole rant was, it is not happening fast enough, because that was one of my big drivers. So am I doing enough? Am I being enough? All that BS was going in my head. And during one of those conversations, I happened to mention to my husband how things weren't moving as fast as I wanted them to. That whole high achievement drive was kicking in and it wasn't being fulfilled. And as I said, we don't do business in our family, and coaching, people don't even understand what coaching is. And my husband said, well, I don't understand coaching. I mean, of course, he does, but not to the extent that people here do. And he said, I don't understand coaching, and I don't understand why people would invest in coaching, but I understand you. I don't believe in coaching, but I believe in you. And I know that whatever you want to do, you will make it work. And I think it was such a beautiful moment for me, because it was one of those times when I didn't believe in myself, but there was somebody who was ready to believe in me and pull me out of that trough, that valley that I was in, and remind me how amazing I was, because we can be so hard on ourselves. Just a tiny conversation, little bit of that validation, little bit of support, little bit of leaning in to somebody who I would trust and who has been there for me. So yes, surrounding ourselves with people who get us, who believe in us, is powerful. Yes, it's immensely powerful.
I absolutely love what both Asmara and Pearl said. And one thing that kept popping up over and over in my mind as they were speaking with your close support system that you have is the way that we lean on them, and understanding that they definitely have our back and believe in us. More times they believe in us more than we believe in ourselves a lot. But also is asking for help and understanding that that's not a sign of weakness. That's something that I struggled with a lot, is I had so many people who supported me, but I wasn't really using that support. I was sort of just, I can do it on my own. And it's a lot harder to try and do it on your own. And I'm a big believer in that you can't do it on your own. And so when I learned to actually ask for help, it came back to me tenfold. They were happy to help me because they believe in me. They were happy to refer me to other people. And then my support network grew. So I just wanted to add that in there.
Snap it. Well, I mean, you all make great points in terms of oftentimes, in those moments where we as individuals, and maybe particularly as women, find ourselves in this space of almost that suffocating, like, oh, can I do it? And then often having that support system of someone just pushing you, and that, and sometimes I don't know if it's fear, but apprehension to ask for help because of what then perception that could create, or what perception that might permeate or continue by asking for help. Which kind of leads us into the next question. And Dana kind of already alluded to this in terms of, knowing what we all know now, or knowing what you all know now, based on the experiences that you've been through. What is the one thing you would have told your 18-year-old self to almost maybe accelerate to get to where you are now in a different way?
Love this question. So I've been thinking about this, and of course, I've been on a really big journey as far as healing my own personal stuff. Growing up in a cult, I had to do lots of rewiring of my brain and the programming that brought. And I would say my last 3-4 years in diving into, and might be controversial, but that's me, into the psychedelic world, the plant medicines. That has propelled all of my healing journey, and really being able to come home to who am I at the core? Who am I beyond this body? Who am I as a spiritual being? And I think that, for me personally, that would be the advice that I would give my younger self, is start there. because it would just fast track all of the BS that took years and decades to untangle. So that was my piece.
I would tell 18-year-old me, do not spend any time or energy on guilt. It is the world's most useless emotion. And I do not say that about any other emotion because they all have their time and place. But guilt is that sinkhole that, like, once you start, honey, that's it. You're going to need to call somebody to get you out of it because you just spiral so quickly. And it's just about, like, not even opening that door, right? And I've learned to listen for should in my mental, like, script. So whenever I hear should, I'm like, oh, no, says who, and kind of like police myself that way almost. So that's certainly what I would tell 18-year-old me. That, and that guy who's texting you, just cut it, girl. It's just not worth it, honestly. Wait like 6 years and you'll find Mr. Right on some street in London randomly, and you're like, what the hell?
I love that. Taking off of that, I think I would tell my younger self to be more vocal and spend less time second guessing myself. I think it's important to be vocal about your opinions, your thoughts, and no one really sort of popped out of their mother's womb having figured it all out, right? Everybody sort of had to sort of go through their own journey. They may have had their set of failures. I'm sure they did have their set of failures, and that's what sort of taught them. So, and I also think, just to add to that, the old adage about sort of keep your head down, let your work speak for itself. I don't think that's something that works in today's day and age. You want to be vocal. You want to tell, your internal stakeholders. I mean, I'm from corporate America, so internal stakeholders about all the work you're doing. Sort of, build your brand, market yourself, and I think to the earlier points made, definitely surround yourself with great people who will support you.
I would tell my younger self two things. One is, you're fabulous exactly how you are. You are pretty enough. You are thin enough. You are smart enough. You are intelligent enough. You are enough. And all versions of you are not enough, I would turn them around and say, that's BS. Stop listening to that BS from other people and from yourself. That's the first thing. And the second thing I would say is, never, ever live with any kind of regret. That's my second big one.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I would tell myself, just from hearing what everyone is saying, is that I should figure it now as I go. I just relax, figure it out now, and kill that. I love that stop shooting and police myself conversation. So I think I'm going to talk to myself now and be like, just figure it as they go. And I had a question. I don't know if I can, but do men doubt themselves, and how do they handle doubting themselves? I'm curious.
So I work with men as well as women, and yes, men have just as much doubt. Some will continue to plow through. They continue to take action. They just, it's like, yeah, I got doubt, but it shows up in other ways. Like for women, it often shows up in stopping the action. Whereas I find with men that it, and this is generalizing, it's not for every man, but it often shows up in overspending or needing to, make, $15 million instead of 5, or, it's overachieving, it's pushing themselves to the end, driving themselves into the ground. Those kinds of behaviors is where it shows up, as opposed to, for women, like I said, the behavior is to stop. So we both have it, both sides of the coin, all genders.
Which is ironic, because then what we lack in, they overdo it, which is a reflection of, like, it's negative mirror images of the exact same thing. Crazy.
I think to Dana's point, I think, we sort of self-select ourselves out of opportunities. And that's sort of how we stop our actions, contrary to our male counterparts, who, despite not being 100% confident, will plow through for the most part. And I think that's what we need to sort of do a better job of as women, just to sort of, keep at it. And even if we're not 100% confident, just sort of try and plow through.
Yeah, I love everything that's been said so far, and really echoing a lot of already what's along the lines of we already have, and this is what I would say to my younger self as well, is you already have everything that you need to succeed, whatever succeeding means to you. And that journey is going to be wild. And there's probably a lot of things covering what all of the answers that are underlying there. But through that inner work, as Dana said, and a few others have already mentioned, is that inner work of really understanding that all of that capability, all of that worthiness, all of that knowledge is something we already have or have the ability to go get. And so doing it along the way and just going and going and going and refusing to stop, refusing to fail, all of the above. And that's what I would say to my younger self.
Wow, such amazing and great inputs from all of you, and just looking beyond that transient identity to just going for it and figuring it out along the way. As we consolidate all these amazing points, what do you guys think? What do you see on the horizon for women professionally, say in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think it's a great time to be a woman. I mean, the U.S. has, our vice president is a woman and a woman of color. I think today's day and age, about 41 of Fortune 500 companies have a CEO who's a woman, an all-time record. Obviously, it's not great, but there's definitely progress. So I think the world is recognizing how important the role of woman is, which is wonderful. And I think with sort of COVID having hit us and things, there's a lot of talk, especially in the finance industry, about flexible working hours, something we were never accustomed to. You would hear people in tech working from home, but in finance and banking, that was never a thing. But now, as we think about maybe going to work just 3 days a week or twice a week when things go back to a post-COVID normal, I think women will be able to sort of get an opportunity to manage work-life balance, especially women who have kids. And so I think there is going to be more of a limelight on equal opportunity, which I think is wonderful.
Yeah, I love where things are shifting. I mean, it takes time. It takes time to really turn the whole, we call it the Titanic, right? It takes time to turn that Titanic in a new direction, but we are definitely seeing continual momentum. Sometimes it feels like it's never fast enough, but in the corporate world, we're seeing the stats, and in the business world, we're now at a place where there are more women opening up businesses than there are men. So the tide has turned entrepreneurially. And I think that with so much more awareness and so much more focus on, women can be in businesses and women can be successful financially, that ceiling is starting to come off. And I think women who own businesses are starting to break their own glass ceilings. And this is a lot of what I see with my female entrepreneur clients, is that it's their own imposed glass ceiling. It's not about corporate saying, here's, you can't climb any higher. It's that they'll limit themselves and, stop looking for those opportunities. But I see that shifting, I think, because more women have broken through, and they've done it in a way that doesn't require them to go to the grinding model, and they are finding that harmony of I have the right mix of how much family time, how much work time, how do I want to run my business, and that's where I see there's a huge opportunity for women to lead business in a new way, to lead it from the heart, to lead it from a place of like, okay, I want to have balance, and I want to think about the earth, and I want to think about community, and bringing all of those factors in. So I am super excited for where we're going.
I also see a cultural shift in the way things are happening, and I would say that there's a lot more collaboration. This is a group of women that's come together to create something bigger than themselves. And that spirit of collaboration and owning who we are, that's going to help us a lot in the future.
I'm ready for women to give less shits. If you pardon the mild profanity, I think that society has conditioned us to kind of want to believe that, like, oh yeah, we can have it all. But have you stopped to ask if you want it all though? Like genuinely. And I think that there's going to be more of this mindful assessment of what our expectations of ourselves are and what we're willing to give our energy, time, and by extension, power to, right? And I'm really, really excited for women to just come into that and be like, you know what? Damn the status quo, damn the patriarchy. I'm gonna, tap into my power and do what I gotta do.
Yeah, I think the whole collaboration in the workplace and having that balance, it's a balance of both, and you can use whatever verbiage you want, but that masculine and feminine energy, so to speak, the skills that each gender has to bring to the table and learning from each one, having a little bit more compassion in the workplace and balance, as you guys mentioned, but also, like you said, Esmeralda, learning not to give a shit and understanding that, if you're confident in who you are and you're in alignment and you know what you're doing is right, like sticking up for those things. I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the future from women specifically.
Chavez, what do you see happening in the next 3 to 5 years? I don't know if she heard me. Kate, what do you see happening in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so I think we're going to see more women taking charge and, as you said, not giving a shit and just doing it, and that just overcoming that barrier is the biggest game changer. And yeah, that's just in 5 years. In 20 years, I can't wait to see what 20 years looks like. Yeah. And COVID was good, to Dana's point, that Dana and Ishita, that we'll have more work-life balance for young mothers and anyone who has, especially as a woman, tried to balance having a baby, having a husband, having life that involves other people. So I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, Dana, you brought up a great point when we started in terms of, in the grand scheme of things, we're still pretty young in all of this. We haven't been at this voluntarily for very long. And, it seems like this last 12 months, one of the staggering statistics, I think it came out in like October, is that 900,000 women left the workforce, in a much accelerated pace than men, and for whatever reason, right? I think what we experience affected men and women differently, particularly in a household that has children, just because of the children coming home and all of that happening. But what's really empowering and very hopeful to see is that, as Dana then said too, you're seeing more women opening up businesses because of, potentially this, hey, this is what we experienced, then this, shit hit the fan globally, and now we now have an opportunity to write the script or write a different script or create a story that allows us to step into what we want versus what we think we should have or what others around us think we should work towards or walk towards. You guys are absolutely amazing. We're opening up questions to the audience. We wanted to leave about 10 to 15 minutes for the audience to ask questions. So anybody who's out there, feel free to ask questions.
Let's see if we have anything in the Q&A tab. None yet, but yeah, feel free to even raise your hands.
We were clearly super thorough. I said we were clearly super thorough and covered like every aspect of everything. So yeah.
100%.
I think we're awesome.
Yeah, I just want to build on that point, Lauren. The perspective, of when you think about how long women have been in the workplace. And they say that it takes 3 generations in order for a cultural shift to happen. And so we're coming up on that, the 3rd generation moving through, and you see a cultural shift. You think about, where were we? And I always think this is a great perspective when you step back and you say, okay, if we were women entering the workplace in the 1950s, or early 60s, like think about what we would have been facing at that time, and then think about the difference of what we encounter now. Whether it's in a job or in a business, we have so much now, and sometimes it feels frustrating because it's like, why don't we have pay equity? And especially, I know I'm white and I'm privileged with that, but it saddens me that we don't have pay equity even within women among the races. That needs to change. That totally needs to come up. But it has taken time and things have shifted. So I think more time that we spend celebrating how far we've come, and then saying, okay, what can I do to then help my fellow women to continue to climb? How can I lift them? And I think that might be a question that I would put out to the panelists, is that, what are your thoughts of how do we help each other? How do we be more collaborative, and move from this space of women being catty in the workforce or catty among, business owners, to a place where we are actually genuinely helping one another?
Such a beautiful point that, how can we be those role models and then almost create those role models around us. We actually have a few questions trickling in. One of them being that when you find yourself struggling with imposter syndrome in the moment, what's that one thing you do right then to help right the ship?
I may. Quick technique with that is to talk to yourself. So turn one direction, say all the things, all the negative stuff, get it all out, 15, 20 seconds, turn the other direction and talk about where you're going and how awesome you are. And that is a physical shift of perspective, will also shift your brain over time. Continue to do it.
I love that. I love anything that has to do with like perspective shift. That's my jam. So for me, I have 2 things I do, and they're kind of like meant to be used in tandem. So one of them is I assume I've succeeded, and I envision what it is my future self is telling to my sister. Because my sister is my closest friend. She's the person I'm like the most, candid with. So I imagine my future self telling my sister about how I totally rock this. And that like helps build me up. And then kind of more in the present, I have a kind of like a little formula I use. So I say, I love myself because X and despite Y. And it's like combining both of those 2 things together. So you're not too finely fixated on like, oh, like this is just how awesome I am. Because that becomes, first of all, you don't really then address the things you need to work on, right? Because you're just like single-mindedly tooting your horn at all times. So those are the 2 things I use.
I love those exercises. Oh, go ahead, Pearl. You can.
Can I add to this? I have a simple question that I ask myself whenever I feel that imposter syndrome or fear coming up. And my question is it really the truth, or is it the drama of your own story? More often than not, it is my own drama that I have created. No one else has done it for me. I am a very lucky and privileged person to have all the support in my life. And so I'm taking ownership of that drama. It is me who creates that drama. And when I recognize that, I say, well, you can do better than this. Get out of your own drama. That's it.
I love that approach. And I love how all of these are incorporating these questions to ourselves. And one thing that really helps me think of those questions and confront that inner critic is heavily involved in that imposter syndrome, is I personify my inner critic. And I sort of imagine it as this like bully or like just ugly monster that I give a name. And when it shows up, I show it some grace, and I give myself some grace along the way. But I listen to it. And similar to what Dana said, you almost take that mental shift and you listen to it, you acknowledge that it's there, and you say, thanks for coming, but I'll see you later. It's not my truth right now. It's not what's right, and it's not what I know is true in my gut or in my heart. And then letting that be and almost taking an abrupt approach and saying, you can sit in the back seat, but you're not going to be able to drive.
I love that. Totally love that. I think from my perspective, two quick things. First of all, just taking a step back and just take a breath. And just, I think, similar to what Dana said, just sort of breathe and, put out all the negative thoughts out of the door. But the other way for me that I cope with it is also just sort of asking myself, what's the worst that could happen? If I mess up this transaction or this deal or this client conversation, will it really, could I get fired? Is it really, will I be sort of thrown under the bus? What's the worst that could happen? And when you sort of put things into perspective, day-to-day tasks into perspective, it's not all that big a deal. At least to me, I'm able to convince myself it's not all that big a deal. And so, taking a crack at it, even if I don't succeed, makes me feel a lot more comfortable.
So it's so interesting how I have not met any of you before in my life, and we have the exact same rituals. Just what's the worst that could happen? Talk to the inner monster, acknowledge its presence, and just be like, you need to sit over there, and I'm busy, taking a break. And now more recently, just taking time to stop. Like, once I acknowledge it, first it took a while for me to recognize that this chaos I'm in is all happening in my head. It's not happening, nothing happens out there, it's all in my head, and just acknowledging it and now learning to stop and say, okay, I think I need a day off. As an entrepreneur, there's always like a million things to sort out, and everyone has stuff to do, and just saying, take a break, find my positive peer group, people who feed off them, and then get back to business. Oh, and there's a special place for women it's a special place for women in hell, for women who don't support other women. That was Madeleine Albright. And I would like to encourage everyone to keep that in mind the next time another woman is asking for your help. Hell is hot, I hear.
You bring up an excellent point. Actually, quite a few excellent points. But that concept of, we're all coming from wildly different backgrounds and wildly different places in our lives. And acknowledging and celebrating all of those differences, but understanding that the human fiber that we all experience is exactly the same. Mm-hmm. And, it's always that the human experience is both timeless and universal. And, the opportunities that regardless of what has happened to us and that how that manifests for us specifically, a lot of the underlying fibers that run through all of our stories are the same, which brings a lot of power and empowerment to move forward. And we actually have gotten some other questions. So we'll end on this one, I think, is what are the 3 qualities you would tell other women to work on or focus on?
I'm going to play off Azmira. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Like give less fucks would definitely be on the top priority. I asked ahead of time if I could swear, right? So like I gotta drop one. That's really the first and foremost, is that like you've got to be willing to be your own person. The next thing that I'd say is to continually be doing your own personal development, continually be working with whatever system you love, but get in there and reprogram your brain. It's never too late to have a happy childhood. And that can really, lay a foundation. And then, the third thing is to realize that we're not that different, and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to fail. Maybe that's 4. Cheated.
I would definitely echo that and just add to that, be brave. Don't take no for an answer. Just sort of fight it out, write it out. Secondly, build your own brand. Try and formulate your own journey, navigate through challenges. the way you would want to do it, not because you've seen X, Y, and Z do it in a certain way. I guess don't be scared to sort of challenge the norm. And I guess lastly, have a sense of humor. Don't be scared to laugh at yourself or to break the ice with others. Just have a sense of humor.
I would add, see and hear yourself, because once you start seeing and hearing yourself, you wouldn't need to look for that validation from other people and even your own achievements. You will know that you're enough exactly how you are.
I think the three qualities for me would be always work on cultivating a growth mindset. Don't take like, oh, I'm just not good at it, shrug as an excuse. Be resilient and try to cultivate that resilience so that the stuff that happens to you is water off a duck's back. It's like part of the chapter, it's a footnote, it's something, but it's not the whole bloody novel. Okay. And then the final thing is, weirdly enough, empathy, but not like towards anyone else, towards yourself, because we have all of these like really unhelpful mental scripts that we've like gotten from our childhood, from other people, and just rewriting those, right? So tap into your inner like Steven Spielberg, but he's a director, I don't know, some famous script writer that you can just like fill in, tap into that.
These are all so good, and it's hard to come up with really anything else. And the only thing that keeps ruminating in my brain is really creating a space for you to expand your thinking and creativity. And when we think of creativity, oftentimes it's like drawing or painting. And yes, those are mediums of creativity, but really what that is thinking outside of the box, thinking in a different way. And one thing that I think we all need a little bit more of is playtime. Like, take time for yourself to be silly, to play, to do things that bring you joy, just for the pure sake of bringing you joy and absolutely nothing else. And that will enrich your life in way more ways than just one.
You ladies have been absolutely amazing. And Dana, I know that you have to jump off right at 1. So want to also be cognizant of everyone's time. This has been an amazing discussion, and you all, thank you so much for joining us and offering your tips, your insights, your values, your perspectives. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that this has been helpful and something resonated with everyone on the call today. I've seen some of the things go on in chat. If anybody has any other questions, please reach out. And we can continue the conversation. And yes, we will be continuing this kind of sharing circle specific to women and talking, as we continue on and as other topics, issues, challenges come up. Bye, Dina. Thank you. We'll continue the story. Pollock, what else would you add?
Thanks so much. Yeah, I think my partner in crime, our partner in crime, Matt, will probably add the, contact details in the chat. So you can reach us out on our website, www.leadogo.io, or you could reach out to us on email. And we would love to continue this conversation. It's honestly been so fun and engaging. And I think we should really do this more often. Yeah. And I think as power women, let's continue to lift each other up and as we climb these ladders of successes. Thanks so much.
Thank you, ladies, so much. And thanks to everybody who joined us.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.